Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Hi, folks. Welcome back. And those of you that are new, welcome. This is a video I've been wanting to do for a very long time. And now that I'm out of YouTube jail, at least temporarily, I have no strikes hanging over my channel. It's something I want to discuss. The beginning picture here, censored. The world is changing. Yes, it is. And social media is at the tip of the spear, so to speak, in the censorship. Now, I just saw a story just recently, just in the last few months, that an interview with Tucker Carlson that was on Facebook, or Tucker Carlson video, Facebook took down, not entirely, but 50% less than they would normally promote the video. Because they caved in to requests from the White House and the Biden administration. That's still going on. This isn't some ancient 2020 thing. It's a mystery to me how this got this bad. And it's all of them. It's everybody. Now, they use the guise of misinformation. Misinformation can really hurt people. Yeah, that's true. But that's the way a free society is. You have to take the risk of being offensive and somebody being offended. I mean, look at the appeal I got here. You looked at your content again carefully and have confirmed that it does violate our community guidelines. Will now be available on YouTube. You know we were disappointing, but it's important we keep YouTube community protected. Protected from what? Speech you consider harmful? It's like hate speech. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. That you did something horrendous to somebody that was non-white, and now you're standing on trial, and now you have hate speech charges piled on. No, you committed a crime, the same crime as anybody else would have got charged with. If the judge and or the jury or the prosecutor decide that it was such heinous circumstances what somebody did to a non-white person, that you should put additional time on their sentence, and the judge would go along with it. I have zero problem with it. In that particular instance, it's not hate speech laws. So that means if someone is killed because they're black, they can get additional time under hate speech legislation. That means that somebody that's not a white's life is worth more than somebody that's white's life. Your life is worth more because you're non-white. Well, that goes against every principle of the Constitution and just fair judgment. And it's everybody, like I said. And I can't list the names here because this website won't allow it. But thank God, I'm not saying that Elon Musk is 100% for free speech, and he's the savior that's coming in. No, but Twitter is way, way better than it was. And if Elon Musk had owned Twitter in 2020, when the Hunter Biden laptop was blocked on Facebook and Twitter, we would have had a different president today. That's just a statement of fact. Censorship is telling a man he can't have a steak because a baby can't chew it. That's a Mark Twain quote. Think, wow, John, that was a long time ago, and things are different now. Absolute bull. People are people are people, and they suck just as much, and they're just as much good 100, 200, 300,000 years ago as they are today. People have not changed at all. Just the environment they live in has changed. And here's a phone number if you want to write it down. I don't know if it's still good or not. If you had some problems with Facebook, you're wrongfully banned or censored, call this number. Now, this is for me. This is for January of this year. I put up a video, and they said, we're taking it down. It goes against our community guidelines. You have a 1 week strike. You cannot post anything. You can't do anything for 1 week. So I appealed it. And as you can see here, on January 26th, appeal granted. Thank you for your appeal. We determined that your content, Pfizer Employees Undercover video project, Veritas, doesn't violate our community guidelines. That was some undercover video when James O'Keefe was still with Project Veritas concerning a Pfizer employee. Now, 2 days later, January 28th, Community Guideline Strike 1. Your content Pfizer employee undercover video, Project Veritas, was removed due to a violation of our community guidelines in your channel, blah, blah, blah. Look at the times. January 26, 12:16 p.m. That's Eastern Standard Time. I live on the East Coast in upstate New York. This is at 3:06 a.m. That tells me that somebody outside the United States did that. They have no idea what his free speech is like. So I said, listen, you already okayed it once. I had thought about deleting it after I won the appeal, but I didn't because I won the appeal. And they said, we know you're disappointed. You just told me it was okay. Well, it's not anymore. Sorry, we changed our minds. Bad me. And so that started, and then I got another strike, and the channel was within a hair's breadth of getting deleted. But I got through it. Now, this is from Frederick Douglass, who exactly what I wouldn't call some right-wing or white supremacist by any stretch of the imagination. To suppress free speech is a double wrong. It violates the rights of the hearer as well as those of the speaker. Yeah, a plea for free speech in 1860. 60. That's the first year of the American Civil War. Here is Louis Brandeis. I believe he was a Supreme Court justice at one time. Fear of serious injury cannot alone justify suppression of free speech and assembly. That goes 100% with the Trump rally in Washington on January 6th. 100%. Now, did the Democrats take advantage of that? You betcha they did. And they did it brilliantly. I got to give it to them. But President Trump did not incite the violence. Did some people from that crowd go to the Capitol building and do some really stupid things? You betcha. You betcha. But it was nowhere near as much destruction as was done during the BLM riots in 2020 in Antifa. Not even close. Freedom of speech. You see the tape over her mouth. That's what's happening. Now, it's funny. What was his name? Brian Stelter. That piece of garbage on CNN who's now fired. Talked about this before he was fired on his source, Reliable Sources. There's an oxymoron if I ever heard of one. It's like jumbo shrimp. We're not taking away your freedom of speech, you people that disagree with us. We're taking away your freedom of reach. You can say it all you want to. We're just going to make sure nobody can hear you. Well, that's a nice twist. And it's also against so many principles of the Constitution, the founding of this country, I can't even believe it. It's like the Insurrection Act that James Adams signed. And the one that was done after World War I, around there, they're trying to get Trump on. So insulting people based on how they look, where they come from, language they speak, is still considered freedom of speech. Yes. Yes, it is. And it is unfortunate some people act like asses and don't know what it's like to be in polite society. Yes, you have every right to be a dick. It's unfortunate, but it can't be any other way. Because if it wasn't true, who gets to decide what's considered improper? Everybody will just say, I'm offended, even if you're not. And that person is stifled. You can't do that. As Thomas Sowell said, there are no solutions to every problem, only trade-offs. And the trade-off of getting rid of free speech because someone's offended is extremely, extremely dangerous. Why censorship? Because the lunatic left cannot win at any debate. That's the problem. You've seen how many thousands of videos on YouTube and other websites where somebody will ask them questions and then they're trapped in a logical debate and their head starts spinning and they just flip out, start screaming or walk away. College fascists. I'm old enough to remember. I was born in 1956. I'm 66 years old. I remember when Berkeley was the center of the free speech movement in the country. College campuses was the epicenters of all the free speech movements, period. And look at it now. Hate not welcome here. Anything we don't like, we consider hate. So you need to shut up. And we want legislation and laws passed. So if we don't like what you say and you won't stop, we can put you in jail. Out of Berkeley, Nazi scum. That's probably a Ben Shapiro or one of the other speakers. Guy's an Orthodox Jew, for Pete's sake, and he's a Nazi? Look at these brainwashed morons. They're like the zombies in The Walking Dead. They're just walking around, just spewing just nonsense that their professors and some even their parents and teachers over the years, even in high school, have told them over and over and over. What do you call, I forget what you call people that just spit out propaganda. There's a word for it. They just don't know any better. And then when you ask them direct questions on their beliefs, their brain starts to fry, and they, most of the time, they turn angry and sometimes get physical. And don't forget for a minute, and I'll tell you the truth, this is what worries me more than anything. Don't forget for a minute to say, well, John, as things get worse and worse and worse, the average everyday American, the one that loves this country, loves the Constitution, loves the right of free speech, will stand up and say, no more, we're not taking it anymore. What scares me is the very little public outcry over what happened in 2020 and 2021. You see the sign there. I can't go into detail because this website won't allow it. But the protests that were BLM and Antifa had nothing to do with this policy. And the vast majority of everyday people went along with it, went along with all of it. There were very little protests, and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives were ruined forever. And here we are. It's not about free speech. It's about bigots trying to normalize hate. Who gets to decide? Who gets to decide? Some team or board of academics that are so far left? It's like, almost like the Minority Report. We're going to make you guilty before you do the crime. And who determines what hate speech is? Well, I said, well, John, it's obvious what hate speech is. If you do it, no, it's not. No, it's not. These people are so sensitized and so brainwashed. I went around with years. I was a local elected official in the early 2000s, and I had a convenience store for over 22 years in upstate New York on a very low income section of town. A lot of SUNY students, a lot of New York City kids come up. This is not New York. And we've had hundreds and hundreds of discussions. And every single time I try to use logic and reason, one of two things happen. They just turn around and walk out, or they start screaming at me back because their brains are fried. When you have an opinion that goes against what they believe in, they can't debate. All they can do is protest and shut you up or walk away from you so they don't have to hear you anymore. Free speech is not hate speech. Hate speech is censorship. And look at that hammer and sickle on that sign. That's not an accident, folks. As you can see, the picture from 1984, Big Brother. We were at that point now. Not as bad as 1984, but we're certainly getting there. This is the government the founders warned us about. Today's younger people, when I say younger, I mean 50 and younger. I don't mean kids. I mean even people in their 40s and early 50s think that the government, the federal government, oversees the states. In some ways that's true, but what they don't know is when the Constitution was formed, when the country was formed, it's the states that formed and created the federal government as overseers to make sure certain states don't go too far. And this thing has exploded into a monster that's now out of control in Washington. that exerts its authority in every little trivial thing and just makes lives for people just harder and more difficult. The federal government was created by the states. I wish they would tone it back. But we have to go through Congress for that, and good luck with that. This brings us to Section 230 of the U.S. Code. That was done many years ago when social media was first starting on the internet. Basically, 230 is this. Say I wrote a letter to the local newspaper saying Joe Smith sexually assaulted a 10-year-old. And I wrote that letter to the local newspaper and they printed it. You can sue the local newspaper for slander because you decided to print that letter. But if I put a post on Twitter or on YouTube or any other social media site that Joe Smith assaulted a 10-year-old, they can't sue Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or any of them because they can't control everything that's put up there. Now, if they're asked to take it down and they don't, that's a different issue. But they've been shielded from liability and litigation because social media was supposed to be a public square of all information, both good, bad, and everything in between. But what they've done is they've hidden behind Section 230 so you can't sue them. Meanwhile, they're acting like publishers, like a newspaper that pick and choose what they want up, and they're using safety and community guidelines and other such language to make sure they have it both ways. We can be a publisher and decide, and you can't sue us. And that's the long and the short of it. 1996, I remember it. The Communications Decency Act. It should be updated, but what is Congress? The Democrats will never update it because they like it is. And the Republicans are spineless, ballless, gutless. What are you going to do? Donald Trump says revoke 230. Well, that would destroy every single social media site, every single one. That means lawsuits would be hundreds of thousands of lawsuits everywhere and be backed up in the court for decades if that liability shield was taken away. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, every social media site, almost every website that could post comments would be out of business. So revoking it probably isn't the answer. Maybe threatening it like President Trump is might get them to reform it. We'll have to see. But they're allowed to make their billions and billions in profits without any risk at all to the censorship and what they call community guidelines and standards. Meanwhile, 2020, look at this. The country is going down the tubes. I saw that people that voted for President Biden, when they were told about the Hunter Biden laptop, they were told that if they had known that the Hunter Biden laptop existed, 17% of Biden voters said they would not vote for him. See these pictures here? The vast majority of the American people that vote, of voting age, saw none of this. Saw none of this. This is about a Breitbart editor's appearance. They're burning down buildings. And you saw it maybe on Fox and maybe some other social media, but that was censored too. Here's another one. Burning down cities and the mostly peaceful protest because they control the media and they control the opposition to what they believe in. And there they are, cheering it on to destruction of their own country and their own society and culture. Do you have a right to burn the flag? Yeah, I think it makes you a scumbag, but that's part of the point of free speech. I say something you take offense to. Too bad you don't like it. They say we burn the flag, too bad you don't like it. Okay, fair dues, but they don't believe that. They believe they can burn the flag and shut you up both. Do as I say, not as I do. Let me go back to history. The late 1930s. Benito Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy, who met a very violent end. Fascism should be more appropriately be called corporatism because it is a merger of state and corporate power. The banking industry, social media, tech companies, Hollywood, culture, all are merging with the government and the progressives. And that, folks, is by definition fascism, by a really, truly fascist. Fascism should really be called corporatism because it is the merger of corporate and government power. This is a slippery slope. As you can see, I believe this is the gate to Auschwitz. Am I saying that this is going to happen here in the United States? No, I'm not. But what I'm saying is this is the path we're on. Because how do I know this? Because history has shown it over and over and over. Now, does it always end up as bad as this? No, it doesn't end up as bad as this. And what have we learned? I hope a lot. I hope we've learned a lot. Then this road we're taking, we realize and make a turn. The past is watching us. I love history, especially U.S. history. And there's been the same mistakes made over and over. How does the saying go? History doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. Well, we're in one of those positions. We're at the very beginning of things that could end up so horribly wrong and could go so horribly sideways that nobody will recognize this place a generation from now, 2 generations from now. Do you think for a minute that in 1845, the American people thought that in 20 years, 600,000 of their fellow Americans would die by killing each other, and another million plus wounded and disabled for life? If you punch those numbers in today's population, closer to 6 million dead, another 10 million wounded and disabled. Would you think that would happen to our country now? You would laugh and say, of course not, John. Well, they didn't think that in 1840 either. The past is watching us. The mistakes made by Americans and humans around the world that have been repeated over and over and always ended up with disastrous consequences. We're at the beginning of that road. It's the very beginning, and there's a long way to go to get to this point here we're looking at. A long way to go. I'm not even saying we're close. But all of these horrible things that happen over time in history had a beginning, had a birth, had just like a child taking their first steps. Who would know that a little kid that takes 2 steps and you clap and you're all excited because they can walk, when their 20s would be an Olympic gold medalist in track and field? And that's a long road from 2 steps at the beginning to Olympic gold medal. Just like it's a long road from what's happening now to this picture. But this is the road we're on. We're going to come to a fork in the road very soon. And the American people have to decide which road to take. The road that leads to disaster every time, or a rebirth of a Constitution, of freedoms that were God-given rights. And that's the difference between progressives and conservatives. Progressives think rights were given to the people by government. And conservatives believe those rights were given by God. And that is the battle. And that is the 2 sides of a culture battling each other. And right now, the progressive side has a lot of victories. We'll see if that continues. The past is watching. When you look back on your life, I'm 66. I'm not going to live a lot longer. But those of you in your 20s and 30s and 40s now, 30 years from now, when you look back, you think to yourself, I had wish I had said, and I'd wish I had done more. But then it will be too late, just like what happened here. Until the next time, goodbye and good luck.